Welcome to the Veterans Legal Lowdown. Joining me today are Christine Clements and Brad Hennings. Welcome, both of you. And today we're going to be talking about the VA Claims and Appeals Backlog, an update on September 8th, 2021. So, what are we talking about when we talk about a backlog? VA defines the backlog as a number of claims that have been pending over 125 days. Since the onset of COVID-19 pandemic, VA's pre-existing backlog of claims and appeals has grown exponentially. According to VA's website, there is currently a backlog of 178,584 claims. However, the Veterans Benefit Administration estimates that the backlog will peak at about 225,000 to 240,000 claims soon. So there's two parts to the backlog. There's the claims, the initial claims that haven't been adjudicated in 125 days. And then there's the backlog that's also pending at the appellate level at the Board of Veterans Appeals. So Brad, could you tell us about what we know about the backlog pending at the Board of Veterans Appeals?
Thanks, Robert. Yeah, so at the Board of Veterans Appeals, which is the appeals body when you're appealing any VA denied benefits claim, we now have reached a point where the number of appeals in the Appeals Modernization Act system, the new system, the current system that VA is operating, that number has now exceeded what they call the legacy appeals, or from the legacy system that's existed for years and years and years. So the number of AMA appeals pending at the board has reached 99,525. So this exceeds the 97,859 appeals pending in legacy. The bottom line is that the board now has nearly 200,000 appeals pending before it. The legacy docket date is August 2019, and what that means is the board will work legacy appeals that have a VA substantive appeal or VA Form 9 dated August 2019 or earlier. If your appeal in the legacy system was filed after that, they are not currently able to work it unless there is an extenuating circumstance such that you can advance your case on the board's docket due to age, illness, or financial difficulties. So not only do we have all these appeals pending at the board, we have this huge delay in hearings, and there's a huge hearing backlog in both the legacy appeals and the AMA appeals. So now nearly 60% of veterans are choosing to appeal to the board in the AMA instead of requesting higher level reviews or filing supplemental claims. And so what this means is the percentage is higher than expected, that VA expected, and that many of these veterans that are appealing to the board feel like hearings are the only way they can really be heard by the Department of Veterans Affairs. And so they're choosing hearings at a very high percentage. So as of mid-July 2021, the Board of Veterans Appeals claims it has the capacity to hold about 1,000 hearings a week. But in reality, they're conducting less than half that number as they go along. So the board's chairman had announced they hope to hold 50,000 hearings this year. In reality, they've held 20,000 hearings as of August 2021 for their fiscal year, which ends at the end of September. So they're clearly not going to hit the 50,000 mark. But even with holding 20,000 hearings, there are 91,000 hearings that are still pending. Those are veterans waiting for hearings on their legacy or their AMA. And that continues to rise. That backlog is getting bigger. It's not getting smaller because, again, veterans are choosing to get a hearing in the Appeals Modernization Act system. For more information on the BVA backlog, we created a backlog tracker that can be found on our website at cck-law.com/Board of Veterans Appeals Backlog Transparency. And I just want to explain a little bit more about the hearings. While veterans feel that this is the only way that VA is really listening to them, they're very resource heavy for the department. They take more time. The Board of Veterans Appeals doesn't have the staff to manage the demand. And there are all sorts of scheduling issues, technology issues, lack of ability to have folks travel out to the regional offices during COVID. There are a lot of snafus that occur with these hearings. So our general advice has been, if you really need a hearing, please get one. But we think that a lot of times the hearings are unnecessary if you have a good written presentation
You have a new message
to the board.
So Brad, it seems to me that there are two things happening that were, one of which was unexpected. That is, more people in the AMA are appealing their decisions to the higher level, to the Board of Veterans Appeals, than they anticipated. In fact, at a lot higher rate than they originally anticipated. And the ones that are appealing to the board want to have a hearing. And the hearings are the most time resource intensive, for lack of a better word, for the department. And so those two things are driving the number of cases at the board, and the board can't get to all the hearings it needs to as quickly as it would like to.
And all of that is absolutely true. And it's a little bit of, which comes first, the chicken or the egg, because the more resources the board devotes to hearings to try to get that backlog down, that means the fewer resources they can devote to deciding all these cases that are piling up. So the bottom line is they've got a real challenge over the next few years to get down both the case backlog, the appeal backlog, and the hearing backlog.
So that explains what we understand is happening at the Board of Veterans Appeals, but there have been equal challenges at the regional office level. And Christine, can you outline what the challenges have been at the regional office level?
Sure. So one of the main things that we've seen, and I know a lot of the veterans that we work with have experienced, is the compensation and pension examination backlog. The VA, as part of its duty to assist, in many cases needs to obtain examinations to help them decide veterans' claim appropriately. And some of this backlog goes back to April 2020, when, as a result of COVID-19, many in-person services, or most in-person services, were paused, and that included C&P examinations. So what happened is that led to a backlog of requests for examinations. As of March of 2021, there were 352,000 pending exams. So that means that there are 212,000 more exams pending than was the norm in pre-pandemic times. That's significant. Furthermore, the use of contracted examiners over those employed directly by VA has been the source of delay. So VA in this time period has also moved from conducting the examinations themselves to having contract examiners conduct the examinations. I think the idea was that it was going to help alleviate some of the backlog, streamline the process. It has not done that. So that has been another source of delay. Some of this is due to the shutdowns caused by the pandemic. But in terms of the numbers, VA's relying on about in about 90% of their cases, they're relying on these contract examiners to conduct their VA exams. Many people have expressed concerns with the capabilities and qualifications of these vendors. Some of them are poorly trained, or they seem to be ill-equipped. They don't understand what questions are being asked. There are a number of times it's back and forth between the contract vendors and VA. Sometimes the vendors are requesting information directly from veterans in the form of questionnaires that they're asking them to complete. So that has created more delay, more back and forth. This, quite frankly, could lead to more appeals from veterans, these examinations that aren't being conducted appropriately, the examiners not having appropriate qualifications. The other thing is that a number of these contractors are not located near the claimants. And so unlike when VA facilities conducted the hearings or conducted the examinations, many veterans now are having to travel hundreds of miles to attend these examinations. And then if the examination isn't correct or if they've missed something, sometimes they're being scheduled for another examination. VA officials have promised to bring down the backlog to pre-pandemic levels by the end of this fiscal year, which is September 30th, 2021. So got about 22 days by my calculation, approximately. To do so, VA must complete about 40,000 exams each week to erase the backlog. They're currently only performing approximately 32,000 exams per week. So I'm not sure that that math quite works out. As we've now entered the month of September, it appears VA is not going to be able, unfortunately, to meet this goal. That is one of the most major things I think that's happening in terms of what's happening at VA in terms of backlog. The other thing that's happening is a backlog at the NPRC, the National Personnel Records Center. That's home to personnel-related records for both the military and civil services of the United States government. Veterans need these service and medical records as part of their disability claims. That's where they're being housed. And the pileup of requests for records at the NPRC has caused additional delays in the claims process. Since March of 2020, the backlog has grown to about 500,000 requests for records, 500,000. Efforts were made to clear up this backlog, which included hiring additional staff and digitizing more records. The digitization of some records, taking them through that process, made them inaccessible for a period of time as well. So that contributed to some delays, but with the goal of getting them uploaded and bringing the system to more modern times. But there's still thousands of records of requests to process. So the other thing is that we're still in this pandemic. So COVID-19 continues to impact this backlog. And as of August 2nd, 2021, the NPRC had reduced its on-site staffing to 10% of its normal workforce. And that was due to a resurgence of COVID in the St. Louis area. So it continues to rear its head and, still being impacted. And, unfortunately that it has affected these critical records that veterans need. Until further notice, NPRC has said that it will service only emergency requests associated with medical treatments, burials, and homeless veterans trying to gain admittance to a homeless shelter. And they've asked that all other non-emergency requests not be submitted until they return to pre-COVID staffing levels. Non-emergency requests includes requests for replacement medals, administrative corrections, and records research.
So two things really impacting here, both in two critical things, frankly, because let's start with the records. The service records are critical to any claim because the veteran has to prove, many cases, when they served, where they served, and what their discharge status was. And then the second piece is just about every case needs an exam either to determine what the current diagnosis is and or whether there's a relationship between that diagnosis and their military service. So these are two critical functions, both of which are challenging the VA at the moment at the regional office level to get claims adjudicated. Brad, we also have some recent updates on what's happening with VA's challenges with mailing both letters to veterans and, more importantly, decisions to veterans. Can you fill us in on what we know about mail delays caused by either the post office and or the VA itself?
So yeah, there's really three separate things happening with mail. First, and I think most people are aware, the U.S. Postal Service has had its struggles, let's say, in the last year. They're about to change their service levels again come October. The bottom line is that the mail is not moving as quickly as it once did. but both through structural reasons and pandemic reasons. So that's slowed down everybody's mail across the board. However, VA has its own unique challenges as it relates to that. And many veterans advocates that we've spoken with, as well as our own experience, have noticed that the VA outgoing mail, meaning when the VA is sending out its decisions, when the VA is sending out its letters, its notices, hearing notices, anything, it's currently delayed by about a month. And what I mean by that is there are decisions being dated, let's say July 30th, that are not arriving to our office or to veterans until August 30th or later. So they are literally about a month behind in sending things out. Even though it's dated a certain date, it's not being sent out. They have a centralized mail vendor, and that mail vendor has run into a number of issues, we understand. And so they have a huge backlog of hundreds of thousands of pieces of mail that they're working through to try to get current. But in the meantime, it's really dangerous for veterans because they could be missing hearing notices, they could be missing C&P exam notices, they could be missing decisions where they have to respond to that decision within 30 days or 60 days. And it really puts veterans, their dependents, and representatives under a lot of pressure to try to deal with VA not being able to do something as simple as sending out mail. The third issue is we continue to see a delay in the processing of incoming mail at the Board of Veterans' Appeals. It was a crisis at one point. I'd say within the last year, it has gotten better, but there are still delays when you're sending appeals, for example, into the Board of Veterans' Appeals or extension requests, and the board's not getting them in a timely manner, they're not processing them in a timely manner. And that hurts veterans and their dependents. It hurts our clients when we're not given enough time or we're not given credit for getting things in on time due to the government's failure to appropriately process its mail.
And so let's talk about what process means in this context. So if we mail a document or if we direct upload a document, it might not show up in the veterans claims folder where it needs to be in order for a decision to be made for a few weeks to a month, right?
And this is the sort of the misunderstanding about electronic filing, particularly in the VA world, which on its face seems great. You click a button and it just goes to VA and VA adds it to the file. But that's not how it works. You click a button, it goes into what they call a mail portal at the Department of Veterans Affairs. But a person has to process that, has to look at it, has to determine what needs to happen with it, and has to manually interact with that upload that we sent and then add it to VA systems. And so because of that, and because of personnel shortages that they haven't been able to work on this, it can take weeks, it can take a month. So something that you thought you clicked a button and it went right to VA, it did, but it didn't get to where it needed to go in VA for up to a month or two sometimes.
And so there's challenges both uploading and then VA mailing. It's on both ends that they're having.
Yes.
So here's what VA's been saying. VA is making note of the backlog through public press releases and through lawmakers. VA stated reasons for these backlogs include COVID and the narrow backlog due to lack of personnel, the Blue Water Navy Act, and an influx of claims. VA expects 40,000 of these additional claims to be added to the backlog. The expansion of Agent Orange presumptive conditions to include bladder cancer, hypothyroidism, Parkinsonism. VA expects 70,000 of these claims to roll into the backlog come October. So VA is saying it's these new statutes, these new laws that expanded benefits, resulting in more claims. What about the impact on veterans? Despite VA's efforts to decrease the backlogs at all stages of the claims and appeals process, there's still a long way to go. As a result of the delays that we've discussed here, both at the board and the regional office, hundreds of thousands of veterans have been left without access to benefits they rightfully deserve and often depend on to support themselves and their families. And frankly, we don't see this decreasing in the near future, especially as the COVID pandemic continues. Any final comments, Christine?
I think what I would say to veterans and to their survivors who are filing is just don't give up hope. If they have questions, they should reach out to an accredited representative who can walk them through the process. I know that in a lot of these situations, people are already dealing with severe disabilities. They're dealing with tough times. It's only compounded with what's happening at VA. But staying in the process as long as possible, getting answers when they have questions, staying tuned, we'll be providing updates. I think all those are things that can be helpful. And don't get discouraged, we'll get through this.
Brad, any final thoughts from you?
I agree completely with Christine. I think the most important thing you can do is get an accredited representative. Let them try to break through the bureaucracy for you. We spend all day, every day, trying to work through these issues for our clients, and we do, but it's hard to do it on your own. It's hard to deal with the bureaucracy and all these changes and all these things going on behind the scenes that you can't see. Let some other representative help you walk through this process, and be patient.
I think that makes sense. Don't give up. Continue to appeal your claim if you're denied. You have a right to the benefits, and you should continue the process moving forward. I'm sorry the news isn't better, but we continue to monitor it closely. And as Christine noted, please follow us on YouTube, follow our YouTube channel, follow our social media channels as well, and we will continue to update you. Christine, Brad, thank you both, and thank everyone for joining us today.
And please subscribe to our podcast.
Yes.